In 1956, Life magazine published a photo essay showing rural Indiana school children being taught to handle rifles in their own classrooms. Nobody thought it was controversial. In that same decade, American boys routinely brought their small-bore hunting rifles to school and kept them in their lockers so they could go squirrel hunting after the last bell rang. Number 18 on this list was done by 8-year-olds daily in every farming state until 1974, when federal regulations changed. Number 6 was considered a basic household responsibility for girls as young as 7, and the modern CDC now classifies it as an activity requiring adult supervision. These were not dangerous children. They were capable children. The average rural 10-year-old in 1950 could do things that would get a modern parent charged with neglect. And the children who did them grew up to become the generation that won the Cold War and put a man on the moon. They were not traumatized by responsibility. They were formed by it. Before we start, hit subscribe. What you are about to hear is not nostalgia. It is a record of what American children were trusted to do one generation ago, and what we quietly decided they could not be trusted with anymore. Let us count down the 25 dangerous skills. Number 25, driving a tractor before their feet could reach the pedals. On farms across the American Midwest, a boy of 8 or 9 who could operate a tractor was not a novelty. He was a labor asset. He sat on a wooden block tied to the seat, worked the clutch with his toes pointed, and plowed fields for hours. He did it because the family needed it done, and his father was in the next field doing the same. Federal regulations in 1974 established new minimum ages for operating farm equipment in paid employment. What they did not do was change the culture of family farms, where the boy still drove the tractor because that was what boys did. The skill did not disappear. The confidence that a 10-year-old could hold responsibility for a piece of heavy machinery did. Number 24. Handling a small-bore rifle for squirrel hunting. In rural America through the 1960s, a boy's first rifle was typically presented between his 8th and 10th birthdays. It was almost always a single-shot .22 caliber, the classic first hunting rifle passed from father to son. He learned to clean it before he was allowed to fire it. He learned muzzle discipline, trigger discipline, and the 4 fundamental rules of firearm safety before he was trusted to carry it into the woods. By 10, he was hunting squirrels for the supper pot. The meat was not decorative. The family ate what he shot. The rifle did not become more dangerous. The child did not become less capable. What changed was the willingness of the society around them to trust either one. Number 23, butchering a chicken. Every farm girl in America learned how to kill, scald, pluck, and gut a chicken before she was 10. The technique was specific. You held the bird under your arm, broke its neck with a quick downward twist, dipped it in near boiling water to loosen the feathers, plucked it clean in about 3 minutes, and then used a small, sharp knife to dress it. A skilled rural child could take a live chicken and produce an oven-ready bird in under 15 minutes. The skill was considered so ordinary that it was not even remarked upon. Today, less than 3% of Americans know how a chicken gets from a coop to a plate. The rural grandmother who taught her 7-year-old granddaughter how to do it herself would now be viewed with alarm by much of the culture she fed for 100 years. Number 22. Walking 2 miles to school alone. By age 6, rural American children walked to school, often through woods, across fields, and over bridges, without adult supervision. They carried their lunch pail, their school books, and if their family had one, the family dog. They crossed creeks, avoided snakes, and arrived on time. A 2015 survey by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found that only 10% of American children now walk or bike to school. Parents have been arrested in multiple states for allowing children as young as 9 to walk to a park alone. The rural kids of 1950 were not in more danger than today's children. By almost every measurable statistic, child abduction rates are lower now than they were then. What has changed is the adult response to the idea of an independent child. We have eliminated the test and then wondered why the results look different. Number 21, starting the wood stove before sunrise. First pattern break. In 1950, approximately 40% of American homes still heated primarily with wood or coal. In those homes, the morning fire was often the responsibility of the oldest child. A 9-year-old knew how to lay kindling in a cross pattern, how to split a dry log with a hatchet, how to open the damper, how to strike a match against the stove leg, and how to tend the fire for 20 minutes until the cast iron began to radiate heat. She did this in the dark, in a cold kitchen, before the rest of the family woke. The modern home wood stove is regulated by the EPA and installed by licensed professionals. The modern hatchet is kept out of reach of children. The child who used to rise before dawn to warm a house for her family has been replaced by a setting on a digital controller. In many ways, that is progress. We also quietly lost a generation that knew the weight of keeping their family warm through an act of their own competence. Number 20, driving a team of horses or mules. Before the tractor replaced the draft animal, the skill of driving a team was one of the first real responsibilities a farm child acquired. By age 9, a child could harness a team, hitch them to a wagon, walk them to town, pick up supplies, and bring them home. He read the animal's temperament. He knew when the team was tired, when they were spooked, and how to correct a horse that was trying to take advantage of a young driver. This was complex, multi-species behavioral work performed by a 4th grader. The Amish and Mennonite communities still teach it. Almost no one else does. Number 19, preserving food with a pressure canner. A pressure canner filled with boiling water and sealed jars operates at 10 to 15 pounds of pressure and reaches 240 degrees. If it fails, the result is a scalding explosion. Every farm daughter in America learned to operate one, typically by age 10, because the family's winter food supply depended on the summer canning. She filled the jars, sealed them, placed them in the canner, timed the process by a clock on the kitchen wall, and released the pressure correctly at the end. A single canning session might produce 50 jars of beans, tomatoes, or meat. The USDA now publishes extensive warnings about home pressure canning. The rural girl of 1940 had no guidelines. She had her mother standing next to her, a clock, and a cast iron stove. Nobody died of botulism. The pantry filled up. Number 18, operating farm machinery with moving parts. A hay baler, a corn sheller, a thresher, a feed grinder. These machines have pinch points, unguarded belts, exposed gears, and power takeoff shafts. Those shafts will pull a shirt sleeve and an arm into a rotating shaft in less than a second. These are dangerous machines. Farm children in the 1940s and 1950s operated them daily. They did so because the alternative was that the work did not get done. They learned machine safety the hard way. They learned it because their father had shown them what happened to the uncle who lost his hand, and they paid close attention. Federal child labor regulations revised in 1974 now prohibit children under 16 from operating most powered farm machinery, with an exemption for family farms. The difference is that fewer and fewer American children now live on farms at all. The skill and the judgment it required has mostly disappeared with them. Number 17, riding a horse alone across open country. A rural child of 1935 might be sent on a horse to deliver a message to a neighbor 5 miles away. She saddled her own horse, rode out through cattle pasture, opened and closed gates, crossed creeks, and arrived on her own authority. She was 10. The horse knew the route, and the child managed the horse. Nobody drove behind her in a pickup truck. Nobody called ahead to confirm her arrival. The trip took 2 hours, and she was back by supper. Modern equestrian programs involve helmets, waivers, certified instructors, and liability insurance. None of these things are wrong, but the independent working partnership between a rural child and a working horse, which was once the transportation system of half of rural America, has been largely replaced by a recreational activity supervised by professionals. The child on horseback was trusted with her own passage through the world. Number 16, climbing to the top of a silo to check the grain. A farm silo is a cylindrical structure 30 to 70 feet tall that stores fermented feed for livestock. The check for spoilage required climbing a ladder up the outside, opening a hatch at the top, and inspecting the silage. This was often a child's job because a child was lighter on the ladder and could move more easily through a hatch. Falls from silos were the leading cause of on-farm fatalities for rural children between 1920 and 1970. The families who did it anyway did not do so because they were careless. They did it because the work had to be done. The adults had other work to do, and the child was the one positioned to do it. OSHA regulations now classify silo entry as a permit-required confined space operation. The rural 10-year-old of 1950 had a ladder and a flashlight. Every family made the same calculation that every farm family has made for 2,000 years, that the work was necessary, and the child was competent to contribute to it. An axe in the hands of a child is exactly as dangerous as you think it is. That is why, in 1940, rural parents began teaching axe use at 7 or 8. The child learned the grip, the stance, the arc of the swing, and the rule you never swing toward any part of your own body that you would miss. A competent 10-year-old could split a day's worth of firewood in an hour. The calluses on her palms were earned by the time she was 9. Modern child safety advocates recommend that children under 12 use only supervised hand tools with blunt edges. A parent in 1940 would have regarded this as a failure to prepare the child for the world. The axe was a tool. The alternative was a child who could not split wood, which on a working farm in winter meant a child who could not help keep her family warm. Number 14. Shooting a shotgun at flying game. A shotgun is heavier than a small-bore rifle and kicks harder. Mastering it requires leading a moving target, absorbing recoil without flinching, and reading the flight path of birds that are trying to escape you. American farm boys began shooting quail, dove, and duck by age 10. The skill was taught incrementally, first with thrown tin cans in a pasture, then with clay pigeons, then in the field. A boy who could consistently bring down a crossing dove at 30 yards was a boy with an unusual combination of timing, spatial awareness, and self-control. The boy who grew up hunting birds became a man who was not startled by sudden movement, who could make decisions under time pressure, and who understood that competence was not a feeling, but a practice. Number 13. Driving a farm truck on public roads. In most American farm states before 1960, there was no enforced minimum age for driving farm trucks. A 12-year-old might drive the pickup to the grain elevator on a Saturday afternoon. A 10-year-old might drive the truck from the barn to the field and back across a quarter mile of county road. Neighbors knew the child. The sheriff knew the child. Nobody called the authorities because the child was part of an economic unit that had been working that land for 3 generations, and the movement of the truck was part of its operation. Modern graduated licensing laws in every state prohibit this. The 12-year-old farm driver has been replaced in almost every state by a 16-year-old who has completed 50 hours of supervised driving and passed a written exam. The older approach produced drivers who by 16 had already logged 2,000 miles behind the wheel. The modern approach does not. Number 12. Managing a bonfire unsupervised. On rural properties through the 1950s, a 10-year-old might be tasked with maintaining a trash fire or a brush burn for an entire afternoon. She knew the direction of the prevailing wind. She knew to clear a 10-foot radius of combustible material. She knew to keep a rake and a bucket of water within reach. And she knew how to extinguish a fire that began to spread. Nobody called it a life skill. It was just Saturday. Modern fire codes in virtually every jurisdiction require permits for outdoor burning and adult supervision of all open flames. The rural kid with a rake and a burning pile of brush was managing a task that today would require an insurance policy and a permit from the county fire marshal. She was 10. She did it well. Number 11, sharpening knives and tools on a whetstone. Fourth pattern break. A dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp one because it slips. Rural parents knew this. By age 9, a farm child was expected to maintain her own pocket knife. She learned to work the blade against a whetstone at a consistent angle, to test the edge with her thumbnail, to use honing oil, and to respect the difference between a blade that could shave the hair off her forearm and one that could not. She used the knife daily. She cut twine, sliced apples, skinned rabbits, trimmed harness leather, and repaired her own fishing line. The pocket knife was not a weapon. It was a tool, and the tool required maintenance, and the maintenance required learning. Modern schools almost universally prohibit students from carrying pocket knives. The average American child has never used one. Number 10, assisting in livestock birth. When a cow was struggling with a difficult calving in February, the farm family turned out at 3 in the morning to pull the calf. The children were included, not excluded. A 9-year-old might be asked to hold the flashlight, to fetch warm water, to bring the chains, or, if her hands were small enough, to reach into the birth canal and help reposition a calf. She saw blood. She saw the cow's distress. She saw, sometimes, a calf that did not survive. And she saw the family's grief at losing a working animal and a season's worth of expected revenue. She also saw, more often, a slick, wet calf breathe its first breath and stand on wobbling legs within 20 minutes. The cycle of animal life was not a subject introduced in a classroom. It was the Saturday before Easter. She was formed by it. Number 9, rolling her own fish hooks and tying her own lines. Fishing was not a recreational activity in rural America. It was a food source. A 10-year-old who wanted to bring home supper needed to know how to tie a clinch knot, how to set a hook, how to bait with whatever worm or cricket she could find, and how to clean a fish by candlelight if she came home after dark. The knowledge was transmitted by uncles, grandfathers, and older cousins. It was not a class. It was not a camp. It was afternoons on the bank of a creek with someone who knew what they were doing, and the assumption that you would watch closely enough to learn. The 10-year-old who could bring home a stringer of bluegills was contributing real calories to her family's diet. She was a fisherwoman, not a hobbyist. The difference is more than semantic. Number 8, using a scythe or a sickle. Before power equipment reached every farm, the scythe was how grass was cut for hay. A child of 10 could swing a short-handled sickle for an hour at a time, clearing ditches, cutting oats around tree stumps, or harvesting wheat from small plots. The tool has a blade that extends 2 feet out from the handle and moves in a powerful horizontal arc. A miscalculation would take a slice out of the child's own leg. A bad miscalculation could take out a sibling. The skill, therefore, was taught seriously, with the child beginning on a small hand sickle before ever being trusted with a full scythe. Nobody was entertained by this. Nobody documented it. It was simply what children did on farms that had hay to cut. The modern equivalent is the string trimmer, which is sold with a warning label and an instruction manual. The scythe had neither. The child had her grandfather, and the grandfather had his. Number 7, handling a bull, a ram, or a boar. Every working farm had at least one breeding male animal, and every one of those animals was dangerous. A bull could kill a grown man with a single push into a fence. A ram would charge a child's knee at full speed. A boar could slash a human thigh open with a single upward hook of the tusk. Farm children learned to read these animals. They learned to move at right angles, to never turn their back, to carry a stick for a ram, and a cattle prod for a bull, and to know exactly which pen they could enter and which they could not. A 10-year-old could confidently move a 2,000-pound bull from one pasture to another. The alternative was that the bull did not get moved, which was not an acceptable outcome. Modern livestock handling courses offered at community colleges cover the same material in a 12-hour curriculum. The rural 10-year-old learned it by age 8 and had it mastered by age 11. A 7-year-old farm girl in 1940 was often the daytime caregiver for her younger siblings, while her mother worked in the garden, the kitchen, or the dairy barn. She changed diapers. She prepared simple meals. She settled fights. She bandaged scraped knees. She watched a toddler for hours without direct adult supervision. This was not unusual. It was universal. Modern Centers for Disease Control and Prevention guidelines define childhood supervision standards that would have baffled her mother. Those guidelines include the explicit recommendation that children under 12 should not be left alone with infants. The competence that an older farm child once displayed with younger siblings is now treated as a responsibility that no child under adolescence should be asked to carry. Number 5. Building and repairing fences. Barbed wire fence construction requires stretching wire to under 100 pounds of tension, stapling it to posts with a 16-ounce hammer, and cutting the wire with fencing pliers that can take off a finger if misused. Farm children helped build fence by age 9. They dug the post holes, set the posts, stretched the wire, stapled the wire, and walked the line, checking for breaks in whatever weather the day presented. A working farm might have 3 or 4 miles of internal fencing, all of it maintained by family labor. The skill was transferable to dozens of other tasks, because fence building taught a child how materials behave under tension, how tools amplify force, and how steady work over a full day produces a tangible result. That last lesson has become rare in a modern American childhood dominated by digital inputs and short reward cycles. Number 4. Making soap with lye. Lye, or sodium hydroxide, is strongly caustic. It will eat through skin, cause permanent eye damage, and release toxic fumes when combined with water. Every farm woman in America knew how to handle it, because making soap was a routine part of life, and she taught her daughters. A 10-year-old could assist in the soap-making process by stirring the fat and lye mixture with a wooden paddle while her mother watched. She knew the smell. She knew the color change that indicated saponification was complete. She knew that if any lye splashed on her skin, she was to flood the area with vinegar immediately. Modern homemade soap is now sold at craft fairs as a hobby product. The child who used to watch her mother handle caustic chemicals with confidence has been replaced by a child who has never seen an adult handle anything more dangerous than a package of dishwasher pods. Number 3. Traveling on a train or a bus alone. In 1940, a 9-year-old might be put on a train by her parents in Des Moines and retrieved by her grandmother in Chicago 6 hours later. She had a paper ticket, a bag lunch, a change of clothes, and the conductor had been tipped $1 to keep an eye on her. She arrived safely. This was routine. By 1970, the practice had begun to erode, replaced by increasing concern about stranger abduction. The statistical risk to the child had not changed. The cultural response to the risk had. A modern airline unaccompanied minor program involves a $150 surcharge, extensive paperwork, and wristbands for tracking. The conductor and the $1 tip did the same job in 1940 for free. Both approaches delivered the child. One approach also taught her that she was capable of making the trip. Number 2, making decisions during emergencies. When a kitchen fire broke out, when a sibling fell from a hayloft, when a tractor tipped over in a field, when a grandfather collapsed in the barn, the rural child of 1950 did not call 911. In many cases, there was no 911. She ran for her mother. She ran for the neighbor. She brought water. She brought blankets. She stopped the bleeding with a clean towel. She kept a younger child calm. This child acted, and she acted before the adults arrived, because the adults were a mile away, and the situation was already unfolding. This was not heroism. It was the normal response of a child who had been trusted with responsibility her entire life, and who did not freeze when responsibility was suddenly demanded of her. The capacity to act before help arrived, which was once an ordinary feature of American childhood, is now a rare and celebrated thing that inspires newspaper articles when it occurs. Number 1. The expectation itself. This is not a single skill. It is the framework that held all the others together. Your grandmother did not learn to butcher a chicken, drive a team, start a fire, tend a baby, handle a rifle, and pull a calf because she was extraordinary. She learned to do all of these things because her family expected her to. The expectation was the curriculum. An American farm child of 1940 grew up inside a web of responsibilities that began at age 3 with simple chores and expanded every year until by 10, she was a functional adult contributor to the economic life of her household. She was trusted, she was instructed, she was expected to rise, and she did. The modern child is beloved, protected, and organized by adults into carefully supervised activities that almost never carry real consequences. This was a choice made gradually across 2 generations, and it was made with the best intentions. But the side effect has been the elimination of the kind of capability that once defined an American 10-year-old. Every item on this list describes a child who was dangerous, in the specific sense that she could be hurt doing the work. She was also dangerous in a different sense, the one we have mostly forgotten. She was dangerous to anyone who would underestimate her. Here is your challenge. Teach one skill from this list to a young person in your family. Let a child start a fire with supervision. Let a child learn to handle a knife. Let a child have a real chore with real consequences and see what happens. Tell me in the comments which skill on this list you had by 10. Tell me what your grandparents trusted you to do. That confidence did not die. It just got quiet when we decided childhood should be something we curated instead of something we handed over. It is time to trust the children again.